Let's face it, I'm a huge Sonic fan. You probably know that for years. You have seen me mostly talk about the video games, the cartoons, and just recently, the movies. However, you rarely hear me talk about one side of this multimedia franchise, and that is the comics. I talked about them on an occasion in some of my recent videos, but never have dedicated a full video on them. You might be thinking, so you're going to talk about IDW Sonic? No, I am going to talk about what came decades before. Oh, that weird, controversial, soap opera, un-Sonic comic book? Well, at the time of this video, it's the 30th anniversary of that weird, controversial soap opera un-Sonic. No. Let's celebrate the 30th anniversary of the world's most way past cool comic, Archie Sonic, because this comic book series was awesome! I don't really have that much time to go full in depth or analyze Archie, so I will just give my thoughts on the surface level stuff, and it's best to start off with the storytelling. The original premise of Archie Sonic is very similar to that of the Saturday morning cartoon. The freedom fighters of Navajo Village, co-led by Sonic and Sally, are trying to retake the stolen kingdom, Mobiletropolis, from the evil clutches of Julian Robotnik and his roboticized empire. Initially, the issues had a tone similar to that of the Adventures of Sonic cartoon, very wacky and Looney Tune-esque. Over the span of 30-something issues, the tone gradually gets closer to that of SatAM, which is thematically appropriate. Now, for the most part, the series was episodic until the Endgame saga, issues 47 and 50, which depicted the last confrontation between Sonic and the original Robotnik. Now, it seems like I'm scanning through the story arcs, but the problem is that we will be here all day discussing my favorites and not talk about the other stuff this series had to offer. You also might have noticed that I said the original premise of the series. Well, yeah, that was the overarching premise of the series for the first 50 issues, but after the Endgame arc, which felt like what could have been the ending to the series, it just kept going. Robotnik's gone, but that doesn't mean there aren't any more villains who want to conquer the world or make interesting stories with. I love that. That's the best praise I can give Archie's storytelling, is that it was never stationary. It's always changing. There's never a point in the series where it stayed in one place. Look at Navajo Village in the early miniseries, and look at it nearly a decade in real time. It looks much more developed. Granted, that's the art being great, but... Oh yeah, the amazing artwork! Archie has some of the best artwork in not just Sonic comics, but Sonic period. In the beginning, the art was very standard, just simply emulating the Graham Martin or American Sonic look into the comics. But after a while, the artwork started to get more dynamic, or honestly, looked like manga. I have so many favorite artists like Steven Butler, who is my absolute favorite, Jay Exer, Spaz. That man can emulate any Sonic art style, it's insane. Tracy Yarley, Evan Stanley, Adam Price Thomas, and so many more. Archie had a very versatile lineup of artists, and some of this is just poster or screensaver worthy. That's all I can say about the surface level of the comic book with the art and storytelling, so let's move on to the cast of characters in the comics. To start off, Sonic is almost pretty self-explanatory. Very similar to the games, but one little headcanon about Archie Sonic that I like is that Game Sonic is the one we look up to, Archie Sonic is the one that we will end up being. I'm saying that Archie Sonic is just a quote-unquote realistic interpretation of Sonic, as if Sonic actually existed in our world. He's more arrogant, more cocky, and not as subdued in the romance area, but his sense of justice and freedom is still there, which I believe is Sonic's defining character trait. And a great distinction from his game counterpart, he actually yearns for that freedom because early on, it was taken from him when he was a kid, whereas Game Sonic never had to go to that. They have very different upbringings, but they had the same point of view about justice. At the end of the day, Archie Sonic is still the Sonic you know, but just has some differences you will pick up. I really want to talk about all the freedom fighters, but I only had time to talk about the most iconic one, Princess Sally. Sally is a flawed character, but in a good way. In some issues, the story kind of points out clearly to the audience that she has flaws. I'm not saying people can't call her out at any moment if they feel like she's being petty, but at the same time, I also like she's a fictional character. She did not kill your puppies. Calm down. Jokes aside, Sally still remains as one of my favorite female Sonic characters. It's probably because growing up on any show I watched as a kid that had princesses, she's an antithesis to a traditionally marketed princess. She doesn't have a kingdom, she's trying to retake one. She doesn't stay in her private chambers and prays for the best outcome, she fights on the battlefield for the best outcome. Again, there's plenty to be said about Sally, but trust me, she's at the very least a good character. Let's move on to the villains. Eggman. This guy. Ooh, okay. Just imagine Game Eggman on steroids. Two of the most disastrous things this man has ever done was kill Tommy Turtle. And I'm paraphrasing what he said here, but in a nutshell, he's pretty much saying that he lied of keeping his promise of curing someone of a fatal disease just so they keep working for him. That's messed up. Let's not forget that he scorched Navajo Village to the ground and mentally broke Sonic at the same time. At this point, you just want to see Sonic spin dash this man to death. Oh well, Sonic got his revenge in issue 200. I want to briefly talk about the Rogues Gallery, since it's completely varied. Mammoth Mogul, Iron Queen, Interjack, Phage, Eclipse, Scourge, and so much more. What I really love about Archie Sonic villains is that they all have very different motives, levels of morality, and backgrounds. They're not trying to copy Eggman, or heck, some of them are not trying to conquer anything, just simply trying to make ends meet. What's also great about a good majority of these villains is that they're not exclusive to Sonic. Like Blaze has their own villains, Knuckles got his own villains, Shadow, Silver, and the list goes on. That's great because it shows that despite being the main character, the series world building doesn't revolve around Sonic and makes the world feel larger as a result. In terms of rivals, Scourge is thematically the scariest one for Sonic. It's debatable if you want to say that he's the best rival, but what I really like about Scourge is that he's simply Sonic from another universe, while being a complete opposite of him and stands against everything Sonic stands for. It's a very scary concept since it's like if you ask Sonic why he became a dictator and his response is,
"The question isn't why, kid. It's why not."
Another villain I want to talk about is Ixis Nagas. He's probably the most interesting in terms of thematics because personally, he always felt like the alternative villain of the franchise as a whole. The franchise always had a nature versus technology message, with Eggman being the big bad using technology. But then you have Nagas, who is the antithesis to that message. He doesn't use technology to try to take over the world, he uses his own native magic abilities to do that, which are elemental. He's literally a force of nature, if you will. It's why he's one of my favorite Sonic villains across the entire franchise. Nagas honestly deserves to be the alternative villain of the franchise because he appears almost as frequently as Eggman. Not to mention him scaring Julian Robotnik back in Saturn M, because he was a bigger threat. If Dr. Eggman is Sonic's Green Goblin, then Ixis Nagas is definitely Sonic's Dr. Octopus. You may have noticed that I haven't talked about the negative stuff, but here's why. Archie Sonic, for at least on social media, is probably the most controversial and polarizing Sonic product to date, and it's honestly sad. I have seen so many posts about Archie Sonic where it's trying to cancel the series, or better yet, treat it as some sort of black sheep of Sonic multimedia. Don't get me wrong, there are some very controversial moments within the series and real life conflicts, but personally, it's a dead horse to bring those moments up at this point, and that's why I don't want to talk about them. I mean, answer me this. How many times have you heard about the slap from 2004 on social media? Now compare that to the times you have seen this pic of Sally sacrificing herself. Speaking of Sally, I think part of her being controversial comes from the fact that she dated Sonic, which sparks a whole Son Ally versus Son Amy shipping war. And in my honest opinion, who really cares? I like both ships for different reasons, but I can't really say one is objectively better. I've seen some people say that they changed Sonic for him to be with Sally instead of Amy, And that's not true. Archie Sonic is different than Game Sonic, yes, but that's because during pre-production of Archie Sonic, there was only one game of the series out at the time, and where we make memes like this as an actual representation of that game's lore. People behind Archie Sonic just took their creative liberties to expand upon an existing character, and not because of some ill will to make their intended love interest better than the one that came from a different branch. Although I do believe Sally was given better chances at being Sonic's girlfriend than Amy, and that's a fair argument. However, I honestly don't see any point to argue who is better in an uncivil-like manner, mind you, when both Amy and Sally are really good friends with each other. And Amy herself has been shown to be happy and open about Sonic finding love elsewhere. To me, it's just apples and oranges. Kim Penders. Don't really want to talk about him that much, but a few things to clear up. It's sad that he's embedded into any conversation about Archie to where there is misinformation about Archie that people haphazardly believe, like he wrote most of it pre-Flynn or he created the Freedom Fighters, which isn't true. Honestly, he dragged the reputation of Archie down the drain, regardless if you like him or not. That's all I really want to say about him and just want to move on. I think the biggest form of controversy is about the IDW versus Archie debate, and the notion that IDW is simply better because it's like the games. For starters, no. I mean, IDW Sonic is also a great series of books, just like Archie. But it being like the games or rooted in game canon is not an objective pro over Archie. It just means it has a different approach to storytelling. It's more subjective, honestly, which is fine. To sum this up, IDW Sonic is a comic book series that was made as if Sega was a comic book company, while Archie Sonic is a comic book series as if Marvel Comics created Sonic. They are very different series, and if you really want my honest opinion on which is actually better, then I would give it to Archie based on the clear disadvantage. My nostalgia bias. Okay, truthfully, it's because Archie ran much longer. Decades longer. And I have seen way more highs than IDW, which is currently 4 years old now. Comparing the best of both series, and Archie honestly has more to prove why it's better from a storytelling standpoint, better selection of cast and villains, and much more versatile artwork. IDW, in comparison, is just coming out of his infancy in early years. I'm not persuading anyone to think Archie is better. It's just my honest opinion because if you believe IDW is much better than Archie, more power to you. I just respectfully disagree. I should start wrapping this up. Besides it being the 30th anniversary of this series, which also means it's the 30th anniversary of the Freedom Fighters, I made this video because Archie honestly is the black sheep of Sonic. What inspired me to make this video was that Sonic 101 video a year ago. And when they talk about the Sonic comics, they just ignored Archie. Maybe there are some legal issues, but we're talking about the longest ran licensed series, period, at the time of this video. That earns a lot of pride, so why not acknowledge that? And don't hit me with, it's not like the games. The movies aren't like them either. Yes, they're more relevant and very successful, but I'm really talking from a historical point, not a marketable point for Archie. I've seen people say if anyone wants to jump into Archie, just start at issue 160, because that's when the series got good. Hey, Ian Flynn is a great writer, but he didn't make the series good. He just rejuvenated the series at the time. It's like telling people to skip classic Dragon Ball and go straight to Z, because that's when the series got good. The series has always been good before that, man. Honestly, skipping to issue 160 takes away or dampers some big moments in the franchise later on, so just start at issue 1. My biggest hot take is that Archie is partially responsible for lifting the franchise up now. Think of it like this. Without Archie, characters like Silver or Mighty would have stayed completely hated or obscure before their popularity surge. Without Archie, we wouldn't have Ian Flynn writing for IDW or Frontiers. Without Archie, we wouldn't have Tyson Hess helping with promotional animations, and more importantly, the movies. Yeah, it makes you think that without this one comic book series that started in the 90s, Sonic probably wouldn't have been having his renaissance right now. I know that's a hypothesis contrary to the fact fallacy, but it's something to think about. Personally, for me, without my mom getting this comic book, I wouldn't be that interested in Sonic comics. Archie gave us one of the best crossovers in fictional history, and to a point, it made me become a huge Mega Man fan. I was familiar with Mega Man, but Worlds Collide made me a huge fan of Mega Man. By the way, go check out Archie Mega Man. It's a great series as well. I just want Archie Sonic to be treated with respect. I want it to be embraced or be acknowledged more. It has its flaws, yes, but this franchise itself has its flaws and still pushes on. I just want to see more love for Archie Sonic. I think this video has gone long enough. That was my look back at Archie Sonic and his 30 years. I know that I just scammed through a lot, but if I was talking about what was my favorite story arcs, who was my favorite character or villains, I wouldn't get this video done on time for the anniversary. Since this is a celebrational video, tell me your favorite Archie, IDW, Fleetway Sonic comic moment in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. No in-joke here, just be safe and have a happy holiday.